What's up everyone? National Master Zehn here, bringing you this new series called Simple Perfection. My idea with this series is to help you all easily recognize parts of the board and make simple, yet extremely effective plans based on them. The philosophy behind this is that it's incredulous at best, the desire to believe in theory trumping practice. Of course, chess is won by those that make better decisions, not one that quote-unquote know more about the game. If you tell me what Tal's favorite pizza topping is, but you blunder your queen, well then you're probably not going to beat me at chess, despite the fact that you know more about the game than me. Of course, this is a silly example, but hopefully you guys get the point. So join me as I help you to become voyeurs of good moves. So, the game that I've chosen to demonstrate the isolated pawn and how to play against it is a game that I played when I was only 17 years old. I played this game in the Canadian Championships, the final round, against a fellow master for third place. I start my games with pawn to e4. I'm sorry for you d4 and c4 or knight f3, whatever you play, players out there. I have chosen the king's pawn. They played e6, the French defense, 45, and I start with knight to d2. Knight c3 is more exciting, but because it's the final round, I was playing a little bit safer with knight to d2. Knight f6, e5. This is not a theoretical video, so I'm going to go through the opening relatively quickly. c5, and this is something to highlight. Some of you will be questioning why they're moving their pawns before they develop something else, like knight c6. Well, the reason is white has quite a bit of space. e5 pawn grants two squares to white that are in the black position. And when your opponent has more space than you, you should try to break down the things that are causing your opponent to have more space. So c5 aims to chip away at my two pawns. Well, I like my space, so I'm going to respond with c3. So if you take me, I'll retain it. Knight c6, knight e2. You might be curious as to why I would put my knights in front of my king and queen respectively, like I'm trying to keep them warm. This is not just because it's cold in Canada. This is because if I played knight g to f3, well then it leaves this poor knight here without much of a home. He cannot come here for obvious reasons, or here. If he comes to here, well, pawn to c4 is going to make an easy fork. His other two squares, f1 blocking me from castling, or b1, are not very appealing either. So knight e2 is to leave this guy with a home. Take straight to the point, recapture, and he chips away at my space even more. Well, he attacked this pawn 3 times, so I do not want him to take it for free. So I just capture him. He takes with the knight. I castle. I can play knight f3, but I should castle first, because after bishop to b4 check, I'm not sure if I want to put my bishop here yet. In some versions it comes to g5, and I also don't want my knight to return. And I certainly don't want to play king f1. My king needs to castle. Bishop to d6, knight f3, and queen c7. This is to prevent me from playing bishop to f4. The reason I want to play bishop f4 here is because we notice that his two center pawns are on light squares. So his bishop over here is on a light square as well, so he's kind of stuck behind these pawns, which is characteristic of the French. We call it a bad French bishop, which means that the other one is the good French bishop. He runs on dark colored squares and these ones are on light colored squares, so together they control many of the squares that are important. So they play queen c7 to prevent me, so I play bishop to d2. In a previous game with the same opponent, I played bishop g5, hoping that they would play h6 at some point, weakening their light squares, which they actually did, obviously not here, because, well, bishop g6 check would be a disaster, but eventually they made this move and later lost. I figured that they would learn from their mistakes, so I just put it on the more moderate d2. They castled, and I played knight g3. It is worth noting that knight c3 is probably a better move. It attacks b5, and if they play a6 to prevent it, well then this will bring me to a concept that I'll show you in the next video, which is color complexes. When they put most of their pawns on one color square, well then the opposite color becomes much weaker. So here, after a simple move, rook c1, my knight can enter this nice square here. So instead, my opponent made this e5 move. And e5 is the move that I'm attributing them losing the game to. The reason is, well, they end up with an isolated pawn. Takes, 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 and, well, we notice this guy now. So what is an isolated pawn? It is a pawn that has no pawn friends, so it's like a solitary guy. He cannot be defended, which means that he is weak. And I've listed the strategy that we're going to use to defeat him, and, well, defeat a master chess player, just by using these 3 simple things. So that's the strategy, and now I actually need to put moves into it. So I know what to do. Well, step 1 is, of course, get a piece in front of it, or block it, but there's someone covering this square, which means that my actual step 1 is to, well, bother this guy and get him off of this square. So I play queen to b3. I need to defend my pawn, and I'm offering a trade on the next move. They played queen f7. They could have made a different move, but if they played the more normal bishop d7, after rook c1, it's not clear where this queen is going. Of course, if it comes something like this, well then, bye-bye rook. So, I guess they just wanted to get their queen out the way immediately. Oops. Queen f7 and bishop c3. I do need to block this pawn, and I need to remove the guy that's preventing me from doing that. If you have a problem, it makes sense to solve it. Takes, takes, bishop d7. And here I want you to pause the video and try to figure out white's next move. So welcome back, and I hope that you guys found this move, queen to d4. Well, step 1 is complete, and we can give it a nice big check mark. I have blocked this pawn from moving, which means that it's on to step 2, which is to attack it. I cannot really reverse the order of the 3 steps because, well, if I try to attack it before I block it, it'll run away. If I try to win it before I attack it, well, that is logically incoherent. So I must follow the steps. They play a6 so that they can move their rook without my queen taking their pawn. I play rook c1. If you ever have a piece that is not doing anything, make sure it has something to do. This is a rule for all of chess. My rook on a1 had no purpose, so I put it on c1, which is an open file, and this is where rooks belong. They play rook c8. They figure, well, that looks like a good strategy. Why don't I copy it? And I make this bishop to e2 move. Bishop e2 is heading to f3. I knew that I should use my bishop to attack the pawn because he currently does nothing. I'm not coming here, 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 or here. h7 is well defended, so he has nothing to do. And if I move somewhere else, like c2, well, they have an attack against my rook, which might be unpleasant because f2 is my most sensitive square. So I pick e2. They played this one, and, well, what's worse than one isolated pawn? 3. Especially when 2 of them are doubled. So their pawn structure is in absolute ruins. That being said, I still need to make my strategy, which is to attack then win it. So I figure, well, who isn't doing anything now? This rook has a job, he's on the c file. This rook kind of has a job too because he's defending my most sensitive square. It's sensitive because, well, they have a semi-open file against it. So it's actually the knight. He doesn't do too much. So I figure, well, he should get to this square or this square. And I have 2 routes to make. I can play knight to e2, heading to c3, and try to attack it. But I picked a more creative route, which is f5, which is setting a trap for my opponent. What is the trap, you're asking? Well, let's see. Rook c4, trying to displace my queen. And I pick queen d3. So before we continue with the game, I think it's useful to notice how black should try to play defense here. Black, of course, should not resign this position. Material is equal, and I doubt a computer would give more than half pawn advantage for white. They should probably start fighting back with queen to e6. They really do need to displace this queen, but rook c4 has a tactical flaw that we're going to see soon. I would play knight to e3, continuing with my plan. They could play rook c1, and queen e4. So that way, if I move my queen, well, and their queen and pawn actually gain some central control, and they can play like d4, and this isolated pawn is technically also a passed pawn, so I don't want him to get too far. And if I play queen takes e4, when the pawn takes on e4, at least this pawn, well, he'll be traded for my pawns if I ever advance them. Of course, white still has a pleasant position here. These doubled pawns are not good. This isolated pawn is not good, and a move like rook c7, entering the 7th rank, is quite strong. But this would offer black okay drawing chances compared to the game, which offered him very little. Queen d3, takes, and here I'll tell you a little story, very short. My opponent was so confident that he was going to win the game and that I had blundered, he played knight g4, and he walked out the room. I had of course anticipated knight g4, so I pretended like I was sad and that I had just blundered. So I waited for him to come back, and as he came back, I played a move that I want you all to spot. White to play and find a nice tactic, and also a necessary tactic, because I have a little bit of a problem here. If I move this knight, well, he takes my pawn with check, and that's almost checkmate, and if I don't move the knight, well, then he takes the knight, and I lose a knight. So why don't you all pause the video and try to find my move. So welcome back, and I hope that some of you found this queen takes d5 move. Well, just winning the pawn. Some of you might be wondering, but Zane, I thought you said you were a master. Why did you just blunder your queen? Well, look at this spectacular knight. He steps to e7, where he can regain the queen, which means that I just have a free pawn. And, well, his problems persist, such as having two double isolated pawns. And if he steps here, and you're like, but Zane, what if he takes your pawn back? Well, of course, if he takes, checkmate. He doesn't want that. And if he takes with the knight, well, that is a pin. And if he tries to break the pin by attacking my knight, I take. And when he regains his knight, of course, this is still checkmate. So he doesn't really have any good options after this queen takes d5 move. He played g6, takes, check, king moves. Here I could take these pawns, but these pawns are pretty much worthless to me, and I don't want to give him any counterplay. So I just play knight e4 back. They play knight e5. I make a fork, because of course now he will not take my pawn when I take on b7. And after king e7, I spotted a way to end the game by winning a piece. So why don't you all pause the video again and try to find a game-winning tactic for white. Okay, so welcome back, and I hope that some of you found this rook e1 move, and you might say, but Zane, where's the tactic? All you did was attack a knight. Well, the tactic actually occurs on the next move, but rook e1 is necessary to form the tactic. Rook takes on e5, and this knight that was going to be a hero by winning the queen in the other line, well, he gets a consolation prize of winning a rook. And if my opponent plays the move that he played in the game, rook c8, this heroic knight both defends checkmate and my rook, so my opponent finally resigned. So what did we notice from this game? After move 13 or so, yeah, 13, well, lucky guess, my opponent took on an isolated pawn. And all I did was use a 3-step plan to defeat him. Of course, I had to make some tactics as well, but all my moves just followed those 3 simple rules. So hopefully this game gives you some inspiration that becoming a master, or at least beating masters, is not too far away, so long as you're able to identify key aspects of the position and play moves around them. So you make your plan, you play your moves, and this is when some sort of objectiveness in chess occurs, and if you play good moves, make good decisions, you will win, despite how much your opponent knows. Thank you for listening to part 1.